All right, welcome back. Art 385, week number 4, part 2, or B. I think I might call this, the first one was A, and this one will be B. So anyways, we last clip looked at kind of the new wave, the cahiers de cinema, and a bit about Jean-Luc Godard and what he was attempting to do, being a little more experimental, kind of violating or going against the Hollywood studio system, yet still being somewhat influenced by certain directors that had a strong voice, maybe even certain images, such as Humphrey Bogart and so forth, and yet trying to tell a story in a different way. It is also known that a lot of these directors from the French New Wave were very influenced by the philosophy of existentialism. And I'm not going to sit here today and try to put myself in the place of an authority on this subject, though it has come up time and time again in my various studies, as well as examining various movies. But I kind of wanted to set the stage because I know some of you might not have had an introduction to philosophy yet, or maybe you have not come across the term existentialism. At its heart, and I'm going to use the definition that Encyclopedia Britannica had. I thought that'd be the simplest and easiest place to go. They summed it up like this in a sentence here. Existentialism is a philosophical movement that is oriented towards two major themes: the analysis of human existence and the centrality of human voice, or human choice. And that kind of boils it down into a couple of good areas to think about. Just think about the term existential. At the very core, it's exist. And so in that regards, it's the idea of looking at human existence. What is it? Why are we here? Why do we exist? It's actually asking one of the most basic, if not core, human questions. What is life? Why am I here? And in that regards, I'm here. So what is the reality of my choices? Am I free to make choices, or am I bound by some sort of fate or providence to follow a narrative that is set before me? Or do I actually have a free will? And they go on to say that existentialism's chief theoretical energies are devoted to these questions. We could go back to the 19th century with Soren Kierkegaard and Friedrich Nietzsche as kind of, if you will, the grandfathers of this thought. It's interesting that Kierkegaard had definitely more of a Christian influence and leaning, and Nietzsche was striking out against it. He was the one who made famous the quote, "God is dead." And so as a philosophy, though, it is about human existence, and it is about trying to find why are we here. One of the most famous quotes as you study existentialism is based on Jean-Paul Sartre. He's a 20th century thinker in this regard, and he definitely was an existential philosopher. He said, "Existence precedes and rules essence." So another way you might have heard, people have taken this quote and put it in this regard, that existence precedes essence. So as a human, I exist, and my essence is based on the choices and the culmination of who I am. What you are, your essence, is a result of all the choices, which is the existence, rather than the reverse. Essence is not destiny. You are what you make of yourself. They were big proponents of free will and free choice in that regard. And that's not in a sense of like, I choose to rank a rock star today, or put on white socks, or so forth. Those are small choices that make up, I guess, in a sense, the essence of who we are. But what they're dealing with are those big philosophical terms. Are we truly free to make the choices of who we are, or does our upbringing, our ancestry, our genetics, do those dictate do those create an essence, or even on a theological level? Did God conceive of the essence of who a man would be and then created man? The existentialist at the core looks at it the reverse way. Man is, we exist, and now we must make the choices of who we will be. And so at the core of it, it is very humanistic. It is about looking at it from a human perspective, and it is really at the core. Once you work through this philosophy, you have to come to the point where you either say there is no God, or God is so absent, so distant that it doesn't matter. And maybe He created and set things in motion, but aside from that, it is man who makes these decisions. There's a few kind of ideas here. Let me just throw out to you. As I said, existence is always about the particular or the individual. It's always my essence. It is my existence, and so forth. Secondly, existence is primarily the problem of existence. Did you follow that? Existence is primarily a problem of existence. It's the mode of being. So therefore, also the investigation of the meaning of being. So I exist, and the fact that I know I exist becomes a problem. How do I sort through that? He's waking up. Can you hear him? Then thirdly, the investigation continues. We think about the possibilities of who we are and what we might do, who we are as an individual. And because of these possibilities, it constitutes an individual's relationship with things, other humans, and existence is always a being within this world here. So you can see, I mean, they think through these things. There's a lot of consideration and so forth. But they have, at the core, removed that there was any sort of God or power in creation. Or if there was, it doesn't matter. It's so far removed we don't understand it and can't comprehend that power. And so we have to start with us as an individual. I exist. So who am I going to become? What will I do? Now, a lot of existentialists try to keep it very nice and tight in that regards. Because if all of a sudden you realize you weren't created for a purpose, to go with the Cal Baptist theme there, or that there was no thought, there was no essence to begin with who you are. Now, some people can run off in a couple different directions. Some could just go mad. I don't know what to do. I don't know what life is about. I'm going to freak out and just go off the deep end. And a true existentialist will say you can't do that. And yet another might go, they might become so hopeless they would go, what's the point? I'm just going to kill myself. The true existentialist says there's a tightrope, and one must find their existence on this very thin line, this very tightrope, and you can't go to either extreme. One extreme is to kill yourself because there's no point, and the other extreme is to go mad. One must find and balance that tension there. And so in that regard, some would say it's not a depressing philosophy, but it is one that actually gives you motivation to live, because without it, there is nothing. So you can definitely see how with this philosophy developing in the late 19th century, becoming very popular after World War I in Europe, in America after World War II, you can see the struggle that people were working through. What is life? Why are we here? If you now have separated us from God or from actually having a purpose being here, now how do we define our own existence? How do we define purpose and so forth in life? My son is trying to exist back there. A couple of big proponents in literature were Kafka and Albert Camus. Kafka's famous for the Metamorphosis, about the guy who woke up one morning and all of a sudden he's a cockroach. A really great short story if you haven't read it. It's actually kind of frustrating if you think about it. I would hate to become a cockroach. But nonetheless, it's about existence. And one of the most famous, I read it actually my senior year in high school, and it had a profound effect on me. It didn't make me an existentialist, but it got me thinking, was Albert Camus' The Stranger. He also wrote The Plague, you might be familiar with. These are all novellas, short stories, men kind of working through this idea. So this philosophy was a bit behind what Impressionism was. Then it moved and evolved, and some went off into Dadaism, others went into Surrealism and Cubism, but there was a fragmentation all of a sudden from where at one point in the Renaissance, we were trying to create and to emulate and to mimic life as it was. And you look back at some of those paintings, they're profound, they're beautiful to the eye because they look almost lifelike. If you ever have the chance to go to the Louvre in France, you can go see the Mona Lisa. You can go see some of these very wonderful paintings, Michelangelo and Renoir and so forth. Beautiful artworks, and they were striving to capture reality as it was. And yet, as the philosophy of life, as humanism really began to get a hold, and mankind began to reject God and reject that they were created in the image of God, there was a fragmentation that came. Now, what I'm leading into is I want you to watch Francis Schaeffer's videos that I have up there. They're from a series of How Then Shall We Live? But the particular one I want you to look at, and I've got all 3 videos on there. They're 9 minutes each, but they're one whole segment called The Era or The Age of Fragmentation. And what he does is he follows from Impressionism and really the video before, I think he ended it with Nietzsche and Kierkegaard, how this philosophy moved and became existentialism. I don't think he uses the term existentialism, but he does use the term non-reason, and that is with reason, because this existential thought also gave birth to nihilism, Dadaism, and even what we now call postmodernism. So he touches on that and looks at that. Let me get my boy here so you can take a look at him. We'll end on existentialism. Come here, Owen. Come take a look here at the video. Oh, I know some of you guys were emailing. Can we see the baby? Well, there he is. He's hiding because of the lights. But this is little Owen James, who's I think just about 2.5 weeks old right now. And he's waking up because he's hungry, as all little 2-week-old babies are. Yeah, there he is. He opened his eyes for a second there. So anyways, I want you to consider existentialism because the I just exposed that I wasn't fully dressed there. I was wearing my shorts. But anyways, this is getting surreal and bizarre. I talk about existentialism for a couple of reasons. The film that you're watching this week is Jean-Luc Godard. Is known as an existential film, though I think the ending is even a bit nihilistic in a sense that he was not able to, the main character, to maintain an existence. He actually ends up going in one of the stray directions. And I think Jean-Luc Godard is really trying to work through this idea. One, he is trying to establish a new way of telling a story. And 2, he's trying to figure out if his philosophy actually means anything. If it actually can be worked out. And I think in this film, he ends with the idea that no, I don't know if this philosophy works in life. Now, the new way that he's doing things is borrowing from pop art, which the next video I will talk about and set up the new movies. So we'll take a break right now and talk to you soon.